Those types of comments about who did what first shows me that cultural life in Uzbekistan is dead.
I really love the cover art.
I've always been a lover of literature.
Yeah.
I've always understood that literature has a way of explaining the soul.
Boshqalarda qanaqa fazilatlarni yoqtirasiz?
Kokan, amolekin.
Amolekin, amolekin.
The president can't solve all your damn problems.
Right.
Uzbeks are mehbon dust.
Yeah.
They're never going to tell you, but it's up to you to figure it out.
So how do you even come across a book?
I had more questions than answers.
Qaysi fasl ko'proq yoqadi? Yozmi yoki qishmi?
Kish. Men kish yaxshi ko'raman.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a men kata odam. I don't need a Mercedes.
Yeah.
What I want is time.
What inspired you to translate O'tkan Kunlar?
I want them to say, man, I can do it better than Mark Reese.
Assalomu alaykum barchaga. Bugun demak BM Talks loyihasini navbatdagi sonida bizda juda ham bir ajoyib mehmon. And we're going to have to do this in English. So hello and welcome back to BM Talks. And I have the pleasure of speaking with a very special guest, Mark Reese from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the show, man.
Bekzod, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's just get into this talk. Okay. What inspired you to translate O'tkan Kunlar?
Well, different motivations, but in terms of inspiration, I think I've spent 30 years of my life trying to explain Uzbekistan to everyone from my mom and dad and my family to my friends,
right.
But also the U.S. government,
right.
Academia, trying to arrive at these frameworks and definitions that best describe not just Uzbekistan, but Central Asia in general. Yeah. And I think that literature has a way of showing people a heart of a people, rather than telling. Policy people, diplomats, you name it, they tell.
Let me just show the book. I really love the cover art, as you pointed out, and it was translated as Bygone Days.
If I could say in terms of the cover art, that is Gulzar Sultanova. She passed away a few years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
But I was really hurting for some good cover art when it came out. And a friend of mine, Camila, approached her, made a deal, and she just produced that. And it just blows me away every time I look at it.
Wow. Yeah.
So in her memory, I thought I would mention her name.
Sure. Yeah. So just to, if those who are watching this podcast, it's going to be probably airing in a week or so. Where can they buy this book?
Well, different locations around Tashkent. Last night we had a book signing at Asaxiy in Druzhba on Furkat Kuchasa.
Right.
That would be the first place to go.
Yeah.
I spent some time with Akbar Tashtumurov today. He's the publicist handling all this. My buddy Abdulla Kodiriy, and they showed me a couple of other places. They made a really nice donation to the public library that the Culture Fund rejuvenated refurbished from a old Tsarist era building. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous space. Like, congratulations, Uzbekistan, on that. You need to multiply that by 100. But there was a bookstore in that area. He said, Akbar said, we're going to get around to having more locations.
Okay, so mainly all these Asaxiy Bookstores around the city, probably, and some other places. I bought myself 2 copies, and hopefully I'm going to, enjoy this book. But you said you mainly were inspired to translate this book to basically convey a message, right, about Uzbekistan, or your feelings about the country. So then let's go back a little bit and talk about the time when you first came to Uzbekistan. So.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when you join the Peace Corps, you can always tell what group that volunteer is. They're called an RPCV, a Return Peace Corps Volunteer.
Right. And
then they'll put the name of the country behind their name, Ghana. Group number 75.
Right.
So when I got my invitation and it said Uzbekistan Group 2,
right.
I realized I was going to a brand new republic.
Wow.
There were no maps.
So that was the
1994. Well, actually 1993 is when I got the invitation. It took them a while to get me to go for training in Samarkand.
Yeah. So you started off probably with teaching English
yes.
in Termez, right?
For Termez for a month, and then they moved me out of Termez, and they gave me Kokand, where I stayed at number 23 Maktab almost the entire time.
Wow.
And
how long did you spend?
About a year and 9 months.
Okay.
2 years total in Kokand. So I'm just fantastic experience. I mean, Kokand is this gets back to the frameworks of explaining to Americans Central Asia. They like to use terms like fundamentalist Central Asia, fundamentalist Fergana,
right?
The Fergana as the powder keg, ethnic tensions within the valley, and they put these alien Western-driven frameworks to everything, right? And I wouldn't describe it as any of that. I describe it as a conservative community,
right? Yeah.
That's resisted colonial rule for quite some time, and the fact is that these supposed Saudi Wahhabists and Turkish Litzays and spreading whatever they were spreading, they were largely unsuccessful.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I like people in Kokand specifically is that they're tough people. You're not going to come and tell them about Islam.
Yeah.
Be a mehmoon, eat your pulav, drink your tea, but don't get into how my daughter and wife need to dress.
Right. Yeah. So how does a guy like teaching English at one of the public schools in Kokand, I assume, because back in the day, I don't think there were any like private English teaching. Like
Turkish lycees, and then there was two independent schools in the Fergana Valley that were closed down. One of them was in Kokand, run by my dear friend Hakim Can Muhammadiev.
Yeah.
Just Zioli Odam. I mean, just a wonderful guy. Yeah. And he had the Marifat Maktab. And as Marifat, this level of attainment of spiritual progression within Tasawwuf.
Sure.
And I would describe him as that, as this really elegant understanding of Uzbek culture, language, and literature.
So, so you're teaching at this public school, you're teaching English, probably were influenced by the culture, I think.
Sure.
Right? So how do you even come across a book from 19th, 18th century? So tell us about that experience.
I didn't even know about it until I did what every Peace Corps volunteer does when they're done. They go into graduate school.
Right.
And for me, when I finished Peace Corps in the 90s, I had more questions than answers.
Right.
I was trying to understand that profound experience that changed my life and try to come to grips with it in some ways. It wasn't easy. The 90s were rough.
Yeah.
And those were tough times, but I saw a level of bravery in people that I had never seen before, and a level of hospitality. When people took care of me, they had no real motivation to do so.
Yeah.
They could get a knock on the door and ask about what are you doing with the American. But I also knew that when they made pulav for me, that there was not much left in the kitchen. And that really, that's old school cowboy right there, man. Like that is my people. Yeah. And so I respected that. I learned a lot about Islam. Yeah. I said the Shahada in 1995 during Hayat at Juma Masjid. I just went there a couple of days ago. Yeah. Just this profound place for me. And so it just drew me in. And I thought graduate school would be the place to sort of explain this to me.
Right.
And yes and no. Again, in graduate school, you're going to get hit with all these different frameworks that just didn't quite fit the experience that I had. And, not to be an egoist, but in many cases with these professors and guest speakers, I'd spend much more time in the field than them.
Right.
They go spend a summer on a grant and then they write a dissertation.
Right.
And then I have to listen to them go on about it, So, so for me, I've always been a lover of literature.
Yeah.
I've always understood that literature has a way of explaining the soul. Showing rather than telling. It's a teaching methodology. Do you want to be the stage on the sage, right? Or the guide on the side, right?
Right.
I'm the guide on the side, you know.
Right.
But the other thing is so I'm back in 2002 after 9/11. I wanted to enlist in the military. My graduate committee said, Mark, don't do that. You're close to having all of your credits done. You're preparing for your exams for your degree. If you go, you'll never finish, right? So we came up with a modus vivendi, you know, where I went back to Uzbekistan for a year, and my professor said, you know, translate the first chapter, 3 chapters of O'tkan Kunlar. You can do anything in the Turkic languages.
Wow.
So as I started to read through the first 3 chapters, the story pulled me in. And that's when I decided that, you know, honestly, you know, during the Karimov period, you know, people were very guarded about their opinions.
Right.
And no bloggers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. None of that. Right. This, you know, this would be subversive. So, you know, I found that when I brought up, people would ask me, "What are you doing here?" And you know, I say, "Well, I'm trying to translate O'tkan Kunlar," and their face would just suddenly light up. You know, people got passionate and they showed a side of emotion that I wouldn't see in any other context. So, you know, that was just part of the whole passion.
Right.
You know, if it's a project, there's not passion involved. It's just never going to come out right? So for me, you know, along the way, I had many people that wanted the manuscript from me. Many people that wanted to intimidate me to get the manuscript, you know, all sorts of things. And I understood at that point that it was really important. But, you know, in the life of Mark Reese, I wanted to do something that was literary based, you know, and that's what I did. And the other thing is that a kind of a love letter to Uzbekistan, you know, a way of showing my respect to people who took care of me and taught me so much. So I wanted to get it right. I knew that if I handed it over to people that want to collaborate, that it would be not mine, it would not be my voice, they would screw it up. And so I fought for it. You know, it took me 15 years to do it.
Yeah. Yesterday, I think I caught that. It was about like 20 years of your life, basically, right?
A friend of mine at the Uz embassy a couple years ago, a great guy, one of the cultural attachés said, you know, Mark, actually, when you add it up together, it's been 20 years. I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
You know,
So, and then I understand that, again, back in the day, you spoke Uzbek more or less.
I tried.
Much better than probably now. But I heard you speaking yesterday, and it was great.
I just, you know, I mean, in Kokan, I spoke good Vauxhall Tilla, Kuchatilla. My students taught me some really terrible things.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And, you know, I get to the University of Washington, and I'm with this famous Turk Shanos, and she's like, okay, speak some Uzbek. And she's like, don't ever say that again while you were my student. And I'm like, what's the problem, you know?
So you didn't know the translation? Or
I did, but, you know.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to teach you Adobtilla. I'm going to teach you the correct grammatical academic underpinnings of Turkic languages.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was an enormous help, but I still felt the program was lacking. And so that year in Uzbekistan was really formative to me. I got to know Umida Hikmatullaeva, that's now Dr. Hikmatullaeva. Wow. Yeah. She's in learning and design. In my opinion, I get all this attention, but she's the hero of Uzbekistan. Wow. Umida Hashimova, who's in Washington, D.C.
These are the names that I see in the book, right?
I don't, you know what? This culture of claiming that I am the all-seeing God of translation and writing, and how dare anyone approach my greatness, and I'm the only one. Yeah, you're a liar, man.
Right,
you know, the good literature is produced through collaborative effort. They're called editors.
Wow. Yeah,
you know, and I threw out all my notes. They were taking too much room at home. But you know, man, I got brutalized. I got lit up with all of my mistakes and just keep grinding away at it. So Umida Hikmatullayeva did volume 1, and that really set the groundwork for volume 2 and 3 with Hashimova.
Wow.
But, I mean, so I spoke really good at Abdulla Kodiriy, from graduate school, living in Tashkent for a year. I thought I was an excellent translator when I was in Afghanistan. But, life happens. And you just start to not speak it every day. Yeah. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And so over the past 5 years, I'm getting better, but I don't think I have I've got other things going on. I've got a son I have to put to sleep at 7:30 at night, 8 o'clock at night. That gives me this 4-hour window, to see my wife and watch a TV show, and life happens.
Right. Yeah.
So I love coming out for a week or 2 weeks, at least once a year, and just remind me that I speak another language.
Wow.
But you got to be humble about all this. I don't believe I speak as well as I used to.
Right. So we could do a portion of, the interview in Uzbek at some point, I think. Yeah. But so you're saying, for the first time you visited Uzbekistan, or you came to Uzbekistan, was back in the, 1994, and then you probably revisited, right? Like number of times.
Yeah.
So what would you say the biggest difference, or what do you think is the biggest difference now?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a diplomat.
Yeah.
I'm an independent translator.
Sure.
I did get the order to sleep. Thank you, Shafkat. I knew real fear during the Karimov period.
Right.
I couldn't come back to Uzbekistan since Andijan. Up until about 2018,
right.
When I got a visa, when I applied for my visa.
So that was a long
stretch.
Break.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why one of the reasons it took so long is that collaboration was impossible. And when you're in a political situation like that, you become a liability to your friends.
Right.
Like I make a friend and I get to know them, and then somebody knocks on the door after I leave. I'm putting this person in danger. Yeah. And Uzbeks are mehbon dust.
Yeah.
They're never going to tell you. But it's up to you to figure it out.
Right.
And so, if it's taken me a while now to be a little bit more open, it's because I'm kind of working through all that old baggage and saying, you know what, I've got my opinion on things, and I'm going to be fair. None of these people pay me anything to say anything.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have my own opinion, and one opinion is that if it is only the government that manages creative effort in Uzbekistan, it is nothing more than the Soviet Union with an app.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? Creative economies are when independent people can engage in their creative work unfettered and enter a marketplace. And I suspect these people that have been thriving under a protectionist system since the Soviet period are going to be really hurt when they enter into a creative economy like the United States and Europe. Right. Be ready to listen to the critics.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt your feelings, and that idea of criticism is actually a really good thing. It should make you a better artist. Right. So I'm like, I went to the library today. I went to the Jadid conference last December. Say what you want, but leadership has picked a leadership model that makes sense to youth. Right? The Jadids are close. You can still meet the descendants today.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Nothing against Amir Timur, but kind of a terrible pick if you're really trying to influence kids. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not against the Timurids at all.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I laud their achievement.
Right.
But I'm not going to laud their achievement to kiss your butt.
Sure.
The Jadids for me, I saw at the Jadid conference, Timur Aka in charge of, Hoja Ulu, this incredible specialist, and they brought together all these specialists and muhtahassis, and I kind of wonder why they had me there. Like I'm among all these really great people. And, so they've picked a leadership model. Recently, there was a conference on Sharaf Rashidov. I think his legacy needs to be re-examined. But first and foremost, his literary contributions.
Right.
The other day, I had a conversation, and we agree that Sharaf Rashidov, other than one other Lithuanian Central Committee member, was the only literary leader within the Soviet history.
Wow.
That had a literary background. So when Shavkat Aka has a conference on the Jadids, when he awards me the Order of Duslik, he makes the Kodiriy Halma Museum. Honestly, I think of him as the literary president of Central Asia.
Right, yeah.
And so you've got the Jadids and Sharaf Rashidov as these leadership models. Another son of Jazak is now in charge of the country, and he's picking really well thought out leadership models. And I see that.
Right.
And
as an outsider.
Yeah, you can be cynical about it. But then I have to ask the cynics, what do you believe in then? What's it's easy to criticize. It's much more difficult to come up with a solution.
Right. Yeah.
Then who should the heroes be if not the Jadids?
Right.
Who should the heroes be if not Sharaf Rashidov? Pick somebody. Let's talk about it. But they don't. They just talk smack on social media.
Yeah. Yesterday, I posted our picture together and the book on Twitter. And there was some comments like there was this guy who translated this book into English, right? I think, what was the, can you tell? So this is not the first English translation, as I understand. So let's, can we talk about it?
That's just such a stupid, those types of comments about who did what first, right, shows me that cultural life in Uzbekistan is dead.
Right, yeah.
It shows me that it is not developed, all right? There are dozens of translations of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, you name it. Faulkner has been translated into dozens of languages.
Right.
I think I'm first. Technically, I think the Karimov Foundation got their version out. Translated from Russian.
Right.
That's, in my opinion, that's tone deaf. Are you kidding me? 150 years of colonial rule, and you want to do it from Russian. Okay? Yeah. I know that at Jahan Tilla, Professor Kambarov, God rest his soul, asked his students to do separate chapters to bring them all together.
Yeah.
That's one teaching methodology.
Right.
Well, we did that in grad school. That is a methodology. That's a really crappy way to produce a book. Okay? Yeah. Forcing prisoner translators is not a way to get inspirational work. Okay. Yeah. So I have
and they're just students, right?
They're just students, right? So after 30 years or whatever, up until 2017, we had zero activity. Lots of people were attacking me, firing people who were interviewing me about my work, calling me the spion, the agent provocateur. We're going to look bad if Mark finishes O'tkan Kunlar because we've received all this money and had all this time and we can't do it.
Yeah.
Man, I got no time for that anymore.
Right.
And some of these people that were calling me a spion, I see them. They may not know that I know. But whatever, man. Get on with your work.
Right.
All of those conversations are a way to avoid the work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do excuse my language. Do the damn work.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
And stop talking about who is at the top of the mountain first.
Right.
It's a difficult book to read, and to translate. So get at it. Shut up.
Yeah.
Some of these organizations have been paid millions of dollars to do things.
Right.
I'm looking at it like the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
I'm doing a GoFundMe for Mekradon Cheyan. I raised $2,500 so far. And then I get an organization that has millions of dollars approach me. Mark, how can we help? Well, pay me a decent salary so that I can get the work done.
Right.
I don't want a statue. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to be the director. I just want good work before I die. So when you're going to create a creative economy, you know, these government agencies that are sitting on millions of dollars, okay, I don't care. That's governments have certain roles. Like when Saida and her group brings the British Museum, like the Silk Road exhibit to the British Museum, I went to go see it.
Right.
It's magnificent, right? That is the role of government, to me, right? A creative economy, you know, America's creative economy is $800 billion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Europe's combined is 139 billion. All right. This is not chest beating American. All right. This is just a fact. It's just data, right? So, you know, I just want to tell them, you know, come to Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
They produce 10 times more music content than New York and Los Angeles.
Right.
So I'm getting back, I'm tying this comment about who did it first with sort of this very shallow understanding of the cultural landscape of even a creative economy.
Yeah.
You know, Naomi Campbell, she made her career in New York City.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so I want these festivals, conferences, these things that sometimes embarrass me.
Right.
I can say that as an American, that, my God, if Steven Seagal is the only American we can cough up at a festival, I'm embarrassed as an American. He lived in Arizona. I'm embarrassed as an Arizonan.
Wow.
That clown represents my people. Right. Kevin Spacey's a different story. You know, he's an incredible actor.
He was here last year, I think.
Yes, yes. So it's kind of this hot and cold sort of miss. I wish that they would stop thinking that the festival is the work. It's not the work.
Right.
The work is getting Uzbeks to collaborate with foreigners at a granular level to produce things like this.
Right. Yeah.
And so how can the government do to help that? Number one, not interfere. You know, don't send me threatening messages at 2 o'clock in the morning. Would be a really great start. And, you know, if you're going to do that, come to my house so I can whoop your ass. Okay. You know, excuse me, but you might want to edit that out.
No, it's all right.
You know, so don't interfere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're selling the book in Tashkent. Can we get a tax break for a couple of years? You know, to allow us to sell as many copies as possible.
Right.
3 is open up these venues for creatives. I mean, I hate to do it. I got the order of Deuce League for it. Why can't I sell that in the airport? You know, I want a chance to be able to sell along. By the way, along with my Uzbek colleagues, it's going to go into the Uzbek economy. Right. The creative economy.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to get a chance to put the book in front of the 9 million people that come through here for tourism.
Exactly.
What's the problem? Right.
Yeah.
So a market makes I make $1 a book. You know, if I sell 1 million books, you guys can all come and visit me in my place in Spain. Okay. You know.
Okay. So what are some plans that you have to, you know, market this again around the world?
Well, I mean, so
because that was another question. Because, since this book is in English, and yesterday it was another one of the comments was like, okay, so why is the book being sold in Uzbekistan if it's in English?
Because millions of tourists come through.
Yeah.
There are major government initiatives to teach English.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's an incredible honor. 300 people showed up at the book signing last night.
Yeah.
I got choked up at times. Getting a little choked up now. Like, these kids are showing up. They want to read their national literature in another language.
Yeah.
Someone cared enough to take the time to do it from Uzbek.
Yeah.
Took the time to learn Uzbek.
Yeah.
Took the time to go to graduate school.
Wow.
Went through 15 years of BS. You know, I took the time to do it, and that I care about them. And there are other people that can do the same thing. I told those kids last night, you got to kill your heroes.
Yeah.
You know, like I want them to say, man, I can do it better than Mark Reese. Right? But as a foreigner, I want a chance to be able to sell my book in front of, you know, bookstores in Uzbekistan. I want to be able to sell my books at tourist, you know, venues. I would be honored if they became part of the school system. Again, I'm a teacher from number 23 Maktab. That is my homeland, man.
Wow.
And if it becomes part of the school system, cool.
Yeah.
I will. It is beyond any of my expectations.
So have you been in contact with this school?
You know, it's all been hit and miss for 5 years. You know, and I've got all sorts of theories on that. You know, people in leadership positions, you know, the president can't solve all your damn problems.
Yeah.
And if you're relying on the president to solve your problems, you've failed as a leader.
Right.
Okay, I worked for the Navy. You know, you don't show up to your boss and say, look at all these problems I got.
Right.
You know, boo hoo hoo, you know, cry me a river. You know, he's going to look at you, or she is going to look at you, because I've had female bosses in the Navy. Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions.
Yeah.
What did you do? Are you a leader or not? If you're not a leader, get out.
Right.
Let somebody who will step up and take responsibility for it. So that's another part of the creative economy. You know, you can have the guy at the very top picking a leadership model, but, you know, he can't deal with every school administrator.
Right.
You know, customs agent, Hakeem, you know, it's not his job to deal with every single one of them.
Right.
You know, it's people taking responsibility and getting shit done.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, putting it on Amazon is easy, actually.
Yeah.
You know, it took me 30 minutes, click, to hit send. I was terrified. The problem is marketing and advertising is about $50 to $100 a day.
Wow.
One of the initiatives that I'm going to do next year, and no, don't contact me 1,000 times asking to participate. The first year is going to be a first step. I have a small group of people. But next year in Nashville, every October in Nashville, Tennessee, there's the Southern Festival of Books. And for a very small amount of money, I can reserve a booth. But to give you an idea, it's like the second or third oldest literary festival in America.
Wow.
I don't know if you went there when you were in Tennessee, but 200,000 people attend.
Wow.
This thing's so big, they put it in the football, Nissan Stadium.
Wow.
Is where they have one of the events. It's nuts, right? So I want to get some select authors that I trust their content and their integrity.
Right.
Don't call me if you don't have integrity. It's going to go ugly. Okay. And present their work so that 200,000 people can walk by.
That's it. That's a lot of spotlight.
Yeah, I'm working with the Tennessee World Affairs Council. They're part of the World Affairs Council, which is a collection of executives in America. And, you know, work on getting Uzbeks into Nashville and Nashville into Uzbekistan is a big initiative. And one of the groups I'd like to bring is Amazon.
Right.
Amazon, one of the headquarters is in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Elon Musk is getting ready to build the largest supercomputer in Memphis in the world.
Wow.
All right. So Tennessee, Nashville especially, is a really dynamic up-and-coming city. It's the perfect city to collaborate in the United States with Uzbekistan.
Right. Yeah, I heard like there are a lot of Uzbek people living in Nashville, I think.
It's a growing community.
Yeah.
And I know that there's I think it's Silk Road Transportation is a trucking company. You know?
Yeah.
But with all of this, I mean, getting back to governments can only do so much.
Right.
But there are, you know, honestly, there's a lot of businessmen in Tashkent who have made a lot of money building a lot of things, okay, doing a lot of business.
Right.
And I do not think you will have a creative economy until businessmen step up and sponsor independent creatives that they like.
Right.
You know, everyone likes to go to Paris. Everyone likes to go to Rome, London on vacation as these heights of culture. We like to do museum exchanges and everything. Then you need to look at the patronage system that propelled European culture. If you don't want to do European culture, go to China. I don't care. Go to Turkey for the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
The patronage system was vibrant, and it is evident in Istanbul when you see it.
Right.
That for centuries, people who made a lot of money wanted to spend it in ways that would remain after they were gone.
Right.
Right? You go into any church in Europe and you look at the tombs that are in Europe. If you go to any mosque or masjid around the world, you look at the Waqf system of who is buried in these particular mosques. Yeah. You know, the largest patron or the holiest of persons would always be near the window on the street. I think that that's true in Mir Arab Madrasa in Bukhara.
Right.
So my friends, big business people need to be encouraged to invest into independent arts. Yeah. Because otherwise, if it only comes from the government or one group, it's the Soviet Union with an app.
Right.
It is Tanish Bilish. It is, you know, and it will not build what it is that you think it's going to build.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that some people in Uzbekistan, you know, being Uzbeks, I don't think they had a chance to read that book, even in Uzbek. So what would be your message to them? Like, what would you say to convince them to maybe read?
We do this in education, right? I'm developing a Kodiriy online course. It's expensive. It's going to take me time to do it, but I've honestly stopped trying to collaborate with government groups here and just said if I wait for meaningful collaboration, I'm going to be 60 years old. Right. So I'm hoping that the Kodiriy course has some elements that's going to be interesting to kids. You know, the first time I read The Count of Monte Cristo was a comic book. You know, I watched old movies. You know, and then I finally said I need to read Dumas. You know, there are different gateways. You know, I would like to see, you know, FDR during his presidency did fireside chats, you know, where he got on the radio and people could listen to him speak directly to the nation. Let's not wait for every New Year. Right. Okay. You know, that's a Soviet thing, right? Yeah. Do it. Cool. Wish everybody s Novim Godom, Yangi Yoli Mubarak. But, you know, have leadership show. Are you Zioli Odam or not? Okay. I know that Shavkat Akai is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. I sort of wonder, though, about the stratas beneath them. Yeah. You know, are you a true believer in your people, or are you not? You know, and do things that are accessible. Show that a leader wants to read. Yeah. Read with kids. Read to kids. Yeah. I'm beginning to, after some missteps, I'm beginning to develop the audiobook for O'tkan Kunlar. Yeah. You know, I would love that to be read for free on the radio. You know, so kids could listen to it. You know, and you know, but so how can middle-level leadership engage with people in a meaningful way that show that this is important? Yeah. You know, we're building a lot of stuff here. And not all these Soviet buildings should remain. They have bad infrastructure. Tashkent has a bad infrastructure. So you're changing the landscape of Tashkent, right? Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Yeah. All right, mostly what I hear is bad, right? Yeah. What are you giving people to show that you care about them? Right. Okay, you know, when you cut down a tree, you're telling somebody that we're okay with you burning in the sun. Yeah. That's a clear message, right? Right. So what do leadership really believe? Not leadership, but that middle level. Yeah. What about businessmen? What can they do to show that they care? Right. How about patronize the arts? Right. You know, and not just for me. I can think of about a dozen other people that could use a small grant. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, and it does. Yeah, that's a good, really good, insightful, you know, perspective. Basically, saying that leadership and the higher level, the middle level leadership should be
familiar with and should be supporting the arts, should be, well read.
Yeah. Well, the kids are watching you.
Yeah.
Your kids admire you.
Yeah.
My son watches me about how I speak to other people.
Right.
And that is the standard that you're giving to them.
Right.
Right. So if you give your kids the impression that you simply don't care about any of those things, right? That's what it's going to be. There's no school in the world that's going to change that. Right. I'm of the belief in America that you only have your kids until the age of 14 or 15. And then their friends really start to influence their behavior, right? What kind of kids do you want your kids to be around? What kind of friends do you want them to have? Do you want them to be the ye-get-lar that could give a crap about anybody? That's called the 1990s, all right?
Yeah.
So this leadership model has a rational premise to it, reasoning behind it, in that, you show people what it is you care about. And today, the library, once again, I'm not an entire critic. I can give criticism from an objective point of view, but it comes from a good place.
Sure.
Right? So I go to this library today, I think it was an Italian architect that refurbished the place. It was beautiful, and there was a couple hundred kids in there. The weather is nice, and they had a little park area out front. Kids were sitting there. There was a little alcove in the back with some trees, and kids were sitting there. It was one of the places that I've been in Uzbekistan over the past 5 years where I thought, okay, this is exactly what the idea of showing that you care. Whatever you feel about the Russians. Right. They made some pretty cool buildings. Let's not tear them all down. Let's repurpose them and make them places of light. Yeah.
Okay. So we are almost about to be done. So you mentioned your next project is going to be Mirahmedov Chayan, right? Yeah. So how long do you think this project might take?
Well, I didn't get paid for O'tkan Kunlar.
Wow.
But the Uzbek government didn't contract me out for it either. I did it for the joy of me. I lost a son a few years ago, my first son, and I spent some time in Afghanistan and with the government. And I said, man, at the end of your life, if when you die, you don't wish you had 2 more years at the Naval Academy.
Right.
You want more time with your family.
Right.
And I wanted something that my son Michael could pick up and say, this is what my dad is about. Right.
Yeah.
So with Mirahmedov Chayan, I'm trying to raise money. And I've raised enough to sort of cover this trip. And I've got some surprises from this trip that are gonna be bombshells for people. I'm a field guy. I love to get into the field and be with real people.
Yeah.
And so I raised enough to do this trip and to start doing research on Mirahmedov Chayan. But if I got funding, it could take a year.
Right.
If I could hire the people that I need to hire at the rate that they need to be hired at, I could get it done in a year.
Yeah.
I've had offers, 15 cents a word, 20 cents a word.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I've managed multi-million-dollar translation contracts.
Yeah.
Okay. Some translators might accept it because they're desperate for the money. They'll take anything because there's no market for Uzbek translation anywhere in the world, right? But it's then the responsibility of potential patrons to pay people by project. One of my ustads with translation was a woman named Edith Grossman, who translated Cervantes, one of my favorite books. And she's like, Mark, I don't ever do by the word. And if anyone ever offers you by the word, they're amateurs. You should be paid by the project. Because if you buy a kilo of tomatoes, which is paying someone by the word, you're going to get a kilo of tomatoes.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to get tomato sauce. Right? There's not going to be extra work that's put into that. Right? So, part of that patronage may be a little bit expensive at first, but you've got this system set up. And academics and translators and those types, they chase money.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're more likely to get Uzbek learners if there was a system that's set up that supported them. And it's very much like Turkey. You know, Turkey, I would say, I think in the 80s, they made it incredibly easy for international students to go and study Turkish for free. They understood that that initial investment is a good one. And, you know, I don't care about politics of Russia, America, China. I don't care about the great game stuff. You need to have as many nationalities as possible coming here to create as many opportunities as possible for Uzbekistan.
Yeah. Okay. So for this last part, I usually have my guests answering this rapid fire questions, mostly in English, but we're probably going to reverse this with you. So we're going to have these questions in Uzbek, very like short answer questions.
Short questions while I try to figure out an answer.
Yeah, I'll help with the translation. So, all right. So this part, we're going to do the rapid fire questions with Mark in Uzbek, so that you know our viewers can get the picture.
I can get my skills back up to speed. Thank you, Bekzod.
All right. So the first question: o'zingizni qanday 3 so'z bilan tasvirlaysiz? 3 so'z bilan tasvirlang.
What are the 3 words that are most influential to me?
That would describe you.
Describe.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Menimcha 3 so'zlar menimcha umid qilaman ki adab.
Odam, inson.
What? Adab.
Adob.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. So
Adob.
sorry, you just hit my Nashville, Arizona accent. Okay, Adob.
Adob, yeah.
Essentially.
Essentially reliable, okay.
Reliable.
Yeah.
And what's persistent? Tok says.
Qat'i.
Qat'i,
Yeah.
Odam.
Yeah, qat'i.
I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'm persistent.
Persistent. Okay. Yeah. Boshqalarda qanaqa fazilatlarni yoqtirasiz? So to translate in other people, what are the, you know, features or qualities that you appreciate?
Menimcha birinchisi yaxshi tarjimon bo'lsa, siz yozuvchi bo'lishingiz kerak. Lekin sizning hayotingiz qatnashishingiz kerak. Siz Parijga borib, sevgi, muhabbat topib, siz hayotingizni yashashingiz kerak. Qandaychi, siz boks kelishingiz kerak. Am I making sense at all?
I think you're mostly like recommending people to, right? Is it?
You need to live your life.
Right. Is it? But what I asked, maybe I mistranslated. So the question was, what are the qualities that you'd like to see in other people? What are some personalities?
I thought me. Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Well, but interesting, Adob.
Again, the same. So you want to see the same qualities in others as well. Yeah.
Zioli Odam La.
Zioli Odam, yeah.
And Uchinchi Adob.
Again.
Adob says Odam La, Kupal Odam La, Yaman Koraman. Och Kuzli Odam La, Yaman Koraman.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sizga eng katta ilhom bergan odam kim? Kim sizga eng katta ilhom? Who inspires you the most?
Meaning Wailam.
Wailas, yeah.
Harkun, you know, Mark says Yaksha Hayot Yashingiz Karak. Devaitem. Meaning Ogulbolem, Sakiz Yashkirde. Michael. Necha Yil Bizda Berho Balangabla Yashashim is Munkim and Bilmaman. Men Elik Besh Yash Kirdem. Men Bilamanki Yet Mish Yash. Socks on Yash, Toks on Yash Hura Hoklasa. Bizda Vaktim is Kam.
Yeah.
So shooting a tune meaning Bushvaktim Busa, meaning Ugalim Balan. Wanash Natatorium Gaboreb. Boshkas Narsalar, a joy of Narsalar Kedashamas.
Wow. Yeah. It's very. This is something that I actually want to get across to Uzbek people, specifically Uzbek men, Uzbek fathers. This is something that I'm not really saying but it's more of a cultural thing for fathers to keep distance from their children in Uzbek. I don't know, but that's a quality that should be, I think, adopted in some ways.
Just for me, but
I feel the same way. But yeah.
At the end of your life, do you wish you had more time with your business
or with your kids?
Like I've seen a lot of people die.
Yeah.
Okay, and not one of them wish they had another couple of years of work.
Right.
They were all asking for their family.
Right.
And for their loved ones.
Yeah.
And so what I have to ask these hyper masculine men.
Yeah.
Number one, you're not masculine. Okay, you are not the alpha male.
Right.
I can assure you.
If you feel the same way, if you feel that way.
And
or given your background experience with the
there is always someone tougher than you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's always someone smarter than you, right? And you can be a good businessman, and you can be brilliant. You can be the most intelligent person in the room, and that won't matter.
Yeah.
Especially when it's the end of your life. So at the end of your life, what did you teach your son or daughter? Were you present for them?
Yeah.
Were you accessible? I only have so much time to build memories with my son.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to screw that up.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of the book, the Mitch Albom's book. Tuesdays with Morrie.
Tuesdays with Morrie.
Yeah.
I have an old Honda. In Nashville, I don't need a Mercedes.
Yeah.
What I want is time.
Right.
Last summer I took my son to the beach in Florida, and he just, went crazy. It was the first real time he had a real time in the ocean and the beach.
Wow.
And he went nuts, and he'll always remember that.
Yeah. That's All right, moving on to the next question. Nima qilishni yoqtirmaysiz? So this should be simple enough.
What do I don't like to do?
Yeah.
I don't like men COC harakat in Yomon Konaman.
Okay.
I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Man ilchia masman.
Yeah.
I want to have an honest conversation with people.
Yeah. All right. Qaysi musiqa ko'proq, qanaqa musiqa ko'proq eshitasiz?
Musa?
Musiqa, music. What?
Musica. Okay, sorry. Me and my freaking... men punk rock yakshur kodaman. Americana, Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Lekin saxon nichiyil, toksan nichiyil, alternative music yakshur kodaman. Lekin men ham opera sevaman. I love opera.
Wow. Yeah.
Boshka saboshka, I have a wide range of tastes.
Right, yeah. Sizga eng katta ta'sir qilgan film yoki kitob? So, what was the most influential movie or a book?
I would say with film, Somerset Maugham's The Razor Edge with Bill Murray.
Okay.
Kitab, O'tkan Kunlar was a huge influence. But biz the ing ajoyib Yosef Jabor, Cormac McCarthy, Bukisha Kabyok, Bizning Hunik Tarikimiz Hakida Yozganede. Ugly History.
Okay, Tarif. Hunik Tarif Hamasakal. Okay,
Hamas America League Fauji Lara in dates Balan. Hakida Yozgandalar. So Minimche Julik Muhum, Hazard Biz Uzbekistan da post-colonialism Hakida Gaplashiata. Lekin Ham America da Shufikil Arene Hakida Jangla Shuf. Misolachun Minimche President Trump, Iski America. Shonada. Kamala Harris, Bizni Kilajak and Ms. Harakat.
Wow, okay. That's a nice insight. Again, I don't want to get into politics, but okay. But no, that's an American politics. That's okay, I guess. In so many ways. Okay. That's a slightly complex Uzbek. Do'stlaringiz siz haqingizda nimani ko'proq aytishadi? So, what do your friends say about you? What would your friends say about you?
Well, Mark Jinne. Jinne Odam.
Crazy guy in a good sense.
Hakiki Odam.
Hakiki Odam, yeah.
Yeah.
Authentic, yeah.
Authentic. But maybe a little emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. But that's a good quality, I think. Yaxshi ko'rgan ovqatingiz.
Sushi.
Sushi.
Yaxshi ko'raman. Men Uzbek ovqat yaxshi ko'raman, lekin sushi. Mening xotinim bushvaqtimiz bo'lsa, biz sushiga yeyamiz.
Okay.
Men Arizonalikman, so ayniqsa Kokan, amo lekin. Mexican food. Mexican ovqat.
In Arizona, yeah.
In Arizona.
Yeah.
It has to be real.
Right.
Like Santa Fe. Is the real deal. And then you go to Taco Bell and you're like, what happened? Yeah.
Qaysi fasl ko'proq yoqadi? Yozmi yoki qishmi? So
Kish. Men kish yaxshi ko'raman.
Really?
Yeah. Men kata odam. Isik havo yomon ko'raman.
Okay, so
I'm a polar bear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, big guy.
Yeah.
Big guy.
I like cold weather.
O'zingiz yoqtirmaydigan qanaqa odatingiz bor? So a habit that you don't like about yourself, or your own habits that you don't like.
Tis achik kilaman. I get angry quickly.
Okay.
How do you say temper in Uzbek?
Temper. You're bad-tempered.
Achik kilmoq?
Achchig'im tez chiqadi. Jahlim tez chiqadi. Jahlim tez chiqadi.
Men jahl tez chiqaman. Afsuski.
Okay, afsuski. And you already mentioned that. Bo'sh vaqtingizda nima bilan shug'ullanasiz? So you already
mening onam bogada men ishlaman. Yaxshi ko'raman. Men bogchi. Is that how you say gardener? Bogchi.
Bogchi. Onamni bog'larida ishlayman. Okay, so you like doing gardening. Yeah, okay. At your parents' place?
Yes, my mom's.
Yeah, okay. Wow, all right. That should be the end of our conversation. I think we're right on time. Thank you for coming in, doing this conversation. It was really insightful. Yeah, anything you want to say? Anything that I should have asked maybe, or...
Well, I think I was pretty clear, but, I just love this place. I love coming back to it. It brings back a lot of memories. Last September was my 30th year of engagement with Uzbekistan.
Wow.
And I keep coming back to it, and I always learn something new.
Oh, I was going to ask, your handle on Twitter was Uzbek Modernist, right? I thought, maybe you were related to Uzbekistan in some way.
Right. So it's kind of a joke in a way that there's a big debate in academia that when you call Uzbeks, the Jadids, modernists, it's actually kind of Orientalist because you're saying that they discovered modernity and they didn't discover it like they found a space alien. Modernity was a common trend around the planet at the time. There were the Young Turks, there were reformers in Europe, there were reformers in America, the suffragettes that were trying to find rights for women to vote, which was codified in Nashville, Tennessee, by the way. We were key for the suffragette movement in the 19th Amendment. Central Asians, in my opinion, were not these backwards people. They were basically going through the same trends of modernity around the world, just like everyone else.
Right.
And it's easy for the Russians to say, well, look at what we gave them.
Right. Yeah.
We put, I used to hear these ugly things. Well, we put shoes on the feet of Uzbeks. Yeah. I'm like, no, man, you took an entire generation of people, of leadership, and you killed them.
Yeah.
So how can you say that the Uzbeks would have never developed along modern lines?
Right.
They were.
There were
Jadids within the Hanates, within the Ulema.
Yeah.
If we follow Adib Khalid, the Jadids, it was a movement. It was a phenomenon. It wasn't just this small group of dudes.
Right.
right? Nodira Hidayatova brought up her grandmother. You know, she was a female Jadid. You know, and so my joke about the Uzbek modernist is just kind of my sarcasm in some ways. I have a very strange sense of humor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I just wanted to, and I was just curious.
You know, you're one of the only 3 people who have ever asked me, why did you come up with that handle? And I thought it would provoke more questions. And it didn't. I'm like, okay, nobody really pays attention to what I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway,
thank you for your time, Bekzod.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great.
That was awesome.